Okay, the waiters say that they've served everybody, and they did pretty great at my table. If you guys don't care, join me in giving them a hand. But just because I don't always trust them, did everybody get a plate? Does anyone need an extra for someone who's coming in late? If so, grab one of these guys over here before they take it and eat all the leftovers. But truly, I hope it was amazing. I ate, even though I said I wasn't going to, because it just looked so good sitting in front of me. Today, though, is a time that we can all share together. And what better time than to hear from another fellow woman. Today we're going to hear from Kate Brown. Kate is passionate about economic development and desperate for the kingdom of heaven. Her experience working with hundreds of business owners enabled her to find a common thread. For every business success story, there's a personal story that made it happen. Her favorite way to spend her time is collecting those stories, speaking with the makers of the magic, and learning how they create the lifeblood of local economy. She spent most of her career doing so with the Shoals Chamber of Commerce, but more recently has carried on the conversation with her Faith Church family and church members in Florence, Alabama. She graduated the University of North Alabama with a degree in mass communication and intends to put her gift of gab to use in every area of life. She hopes you'll join her in carrying the torch and telling the stories that make our community special. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kate Brown.
Well, hello, ladies of Lawrence County. How are you guys doing today? Good. Listen, I wish I had $1 for every time I have told somebody in this room, I love your outfit. It's already happened so much. So if you've heard that from me, I promise it's not a generic compliment. I'm just obsessed with the outfits and the smiles on your faces today. So I am so excited to meet you today. My name is Kate Brown, and I love business. I am so passionate about it. I used to work for the Shoals Chamber of Commerce, which is your neighboring chamber, if you didn't know, which means I used to scheme things up all day for your benefit with people like Ryan Egley. And if I had to tell you, you have the best team here in Lawrence County, I'm not kidding. I have met your chamber staff, and they work hard to go to bat for you. So yes, absolutely recognize them. They are an incredible team to work with. So in that way, today is kind of like a homecoming for me. I loved every minute of my time with the Shoals Chamber, and I'll tell you the same thing that I told my boss when I did transition out of that job, and it's that I am passionate about economic development, but I'm desperate for the kingdom of heaven, and only God himself could have pulled me into something new, and that's this. So it's a homecoming today, because yes, I've worked in economic development, I've worked with business owners and in tourism, just like you guys, but today, I work for Faith Church in Florence, which means you're my people, but today, you're in my house. So I cannot wait to spend some time with you and get to know you a little bit better. I love all things economic development because to me, businesses are all about the stories that make them up, right? I met with several business owners and business leaders in my time at the chamber, and what I learned is finding out about your businesses is kind of like asking how you fell in love with somebody. Like, think about it. Out of all the fish in the sea, why is Lawrence County, Tennessee the place you had to be? You could have been in Australia. You could have been in Hawaii. Why on earth is it Lawrence County, Tennessee that you fell in love with? And what is it that's so special about what you do that you're willing to spend more time here than you are with your friends and family at home? What is this crazy idea behind the reasons we do what we do in business? And what I've learned is there is always an incredible story to be told there. So today, that's what I want to talk to you about, the power of our personal stories and how they drive the success stories of our business. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to tell you a little bit about my personal story, just an overview, so you can know me a little bit better. And then I'm going to learn something about your personal story as well. Are you ready? Okay, cool. So like I said, my name is Kate Brown. I graduated from the University of North Alabama, where I found the love of my life, my best friend, my husband. We got married right after college, And when we got back, here's the fun part. The day after our honeymoon, I had been working for this incredible company, loved it, thought it was the dream job. Got home the day after my honeymoon to find out that the company was closing its doors and sending me home in a layoff. So honeymoon was over like that. But fortunately, I quickly landed in another great opportunity with the small Chamber of Commerce, which then led to the Shoals Chamber of Commerce, which then led to Faith Church. So that has been my career. If I'm honest with you, the majority of it has been spent working with business owners just like you. So now I want to know a little bit about your personal story. And then a way I'm going to do this is by asking you who you work for. And by show of hands, you're just going to tell me which one relates to you the most. So if there are multiple categories that apply to you, that's totally fine. Just wave at me for anything that represents you and what you do. So in the room, who are my nonprofits? You offer some kind of philanthropic service to the community. Amazing. All right, who are the startups? You've been in business 1 to 5 years, maybe a little longer than that. Anybody? Okay, cool. Got some startups. That's awesome. What about banking? All right, lots of banks. You guys are going to have fun with this one. Okay. Who are my restaurants? Yeah, they're not here. They're too busy serving food right now. Retail. Healthcare. Okay, cool. What about local government, agency, elected officials, anything like that? Nice. And finally, where are my employers? You're a director, you're a manager, you're some kind of direct report for your business. Awesome. I heard a clap. That's cool. I'm glad you love your supervisor. There are so many things I now know about you based on what you just told me about yourself. Not to stereotype you, but I did meet with more than 250 business owners in my time with the Chamber, let alone the leaders and the incredible teams they surrounded themselves with. And what I learned is that business people, they gravitate to a certain kind of business. Your personality will bring you somewhere intentionally. So for those of you who are in the nonprofit world, who provide some kind of service, there is nothing that breaks your heart more than a broken heart. You are selfless, and you will inconvenience yourself in 12 different ways to take care of somebody else. But every time somebody like me gets up here and says something like that to you, you try so hard not to roll your eyes at me, because you're like, yeah, but if you only knew, Kate, the number of people I've already wanted to strangle today. It's true, but it doesn't make you any less of our community heroes. You guys are incredible. And for those of you who are our startups, you're just doing this new thing. Wow. You are bold. You are risk takers. And I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes you operate at a level that the rest of us just struggle to keep up with. You are so high level and high energy. We need more like you. Bankers, I told you I was going to pick on you too. When I worked for the Shoals Chamber, I'm young enough and ignorant enough to admit that I thought there was a stereotype for every business. So I expected all banking people had to be like stuffy old white men in starched suits with no personalities. Yeah, and there's some like that, but let me tell you, nobody has better dirt, blackmail stories, tea than the banking industry. The banking people, they know how to commit a crime and get away with it, and you and I will never find out how much fun they've had in their life. You all have amazing stories to tell based on where you've been, but there's one thing that I know to be true of all of us, besides the fact that we're women, right? Like, obviously, we're women, we run the world, and we could end it there and go home, but that doesn't need to be said. It's already obvious. The thing that we all have in common, believe it or not, is that we're all in sales. Maybe another thing you want to roll your eyes at, right? Because you're like, no. I do social media for my company. I am the CFO of my company. I am not out making sales calls. I am not making these pitches. But guess what? You are. In business and as a person, we spend so much of our time trying to convince somebody to see things our way. I'll give you an example. In my world in ministry, I try to convince people all the time. I sell them on this idea that your actions have eternal consequences. That's a sales pitch if I've ever heard one. How many of you are moms in the room? You've got kids. Awesome. So either you have them now that they're young, or you remember this back in the days when you were trying to get to work on time and you had to sell your kids to get your butt in the car. We're not going to be late to school so that you make me late to work. You sold your kid. How many of you have fur pets at home, fur babies? You've got pets? Yeah. And how many of your pets this morning looked up at you, cuddled you so hard, and tried to convince you with those sweet puppy dog eyes that there is no better place in the world you could possibly be right now than in your bed? Yeah, I see a lot of nods. That happened to me too. And just another confession about myself. I am currently 5 months pregnant, so I don't disagree with them at all. I think I'd rather be home any day of the week. Your bed is the best place you could be. But if even your pets are constantly selling you on something, we're all in sales, right? So let me ask you a question. If we're all in sales, why are we so bad at it? Why is it when we try to have a conversation with somebody to convince them of something, we get nervous, we get frustrated, we don't know the words to say, we don't even take the time to do it? You know, some studies tell us we spend 60% of our communication trying to persuade somebody. So you'd think we'd be a little bit better at it by now. I have an argument for this, and I think it goes back to what I said in the beginning. We don't take the time, or else we just don't know how to create a truly compelling story. The key to a persuasive conversation is a compelling story. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, the power of your story and how it can help you when you're having these big, scary conversations. I think we approach them like a bad date. Have you ever been on a bad date? You know, you've been with that person who talks about themselves the whole time and doesn't let you get a word in. Or else they do let you talk, and when you're speaking with them, you say, oh my gosh, why would anyone want to spend more than 5 minutes of their time talking to you? You're so boring. Today we're going to talk about how not to be that person, how to use the power of our stories moving forward, and maybe in a bit of an unsurprising way. See, I think some of the most powerful stories I've ever heard come from the sport of football. You know what I'm talking about, like who did not cry when you watched Sandra Bullock in The Blind Side? Or remember the Titans when the James Taylor song played in the background before the car crash? If I have any Auburn fans in the room, it was the victorious feeling of 1 second left on the clock in the 2013 Iron Bowl. That was enough for you, right? So while we're here, I have to establish it. Let's go ahead, get the elephant in the room out of the way. Did anybody just live for that moment just now? Can I get a war eagle from any Auburn fans in the room? Hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. No Auburn fans. Is it illegal in the state of Tennessee to ask if there are any Alabama fans in here? Can I get a roll tide? Woo! And you're all giving me like daggers for eyes right now, so I know I have to say it. I will give you go Vols in the state of Tennessee. That is right. I love a good team loyalty. I love the spirit of football. But if I'm being honest with you, football, it doesn't really do it for me. Like I said, the stories are cool and everything, and I consider myself a fan of the Crimson Tide. I really do. And I pull for North Alabama Lions because that's my alma mater. So I love to watch my teams, but at the end of the day, think about like your husbands at home. I am just not interested in spending a whole SEC Saturday on the football with a bowl of Cheetos in hand. I have better things to do with my life and my time than to watch football all day long. But for some people, football is everything. For some people, their whole family schedules revolve around where this ball is going to be at what point in time, whether it's in the hands of their kids going to practices and games, or whether it's in the hands of professional athletes and you're planning the tailgate for the weekend and what city you're going to travel to support your favorite team. Football means a lot to a lot of people. So I started thinking about it, and I was like, what is it that makes a football so special to so many people, you know? I looked up everything. What is it that makes a football magical? How is it made? And what I learned is there are 3 basic parts of a football, and those 3 basic parts are the same thing that make you and me special. In our businesses, in our lives, it's the same 3 parts that make us special. So looking at this football right here, you can see a few major things about it, right? One thing you don't see is the bladder of the football. It's the inflation device inside. It's what gives the ball its shape. It's the life of the ball. And then you've got the leather, the covering and the surface that we handle. And then you've got the most aesthetically pleasing detail of all. You've got this white lace just finishing the whole thing and tying it all together. It's a pretty thing, but the parts of it still confuse me. Like what do parts of football have to do with us? Let me tell you a story about what football has to do with construction. Anybody off the top of your head, like you're thinking, oh yeah, I totally see where this is going? No, you don't, I promise you. Neither did I when I had this worst sales call of my entire life. See, when I worked for the Shoals Chamber, my president and I were going to sell a new membership structure to our members. So for all of you who are a part of the chamber, here's what you need to know. We were going and selling them custom packages of benefits. We would say, here's what all we can offer you, but what's the cost point that makes the most sense for you to invest in these benefits? Except at the time, we had no idea what we were doing. We had never sold it before, so we brought a consultant with us. And unfortunately, big red flag, the first member we went to was someone we had never seen before. We did not know at all. We just knew it was time for his renewal, so let's go visit this guy and see how it goes. And if you will, picture this. This guy is perpetually bored, completely disinterested in what we had to say. And this is what this business owner looked like. Does that not look like a bad date to you? Like, are you not just panicking thinking about having to make a sales pitch to him? That was how we were. We were so intimidated, we clammed up, and we had no idea how to proceed. So we did that thing that you guys will do too with a client, with a customer, where we said, we're with the Shoals Chamber, here's what we're doing, and here's how much it costs, and as we look away, because we can't make eye contact with you, do you want it? Like, are you in? No? Okay. So as you can imagine, we walked out that day with $0. It was such a bad day. But in our defense, does he look like a football fan to you? Little did we know football was the key to his heart. We broke the number one rule of business that day. It doesn't matter if you've been in business for 5 minutes or 5 decades. Everybody has heard the phrase, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. Yeah, I see you guys saying it with me. We did not take the time to get to know this guy at all, much less to establish some form of likability with him, so that in the end, he had a reason to trust us with his finances and this investment, right? So when we got back in the car, our consultant said, so how do you think it went? And we're like, pretty rough. And he said, well, I just have one question. What's the deal with the footballs? This guy had a shrine to football behind him. He had shelves just filled with signed footballs, headings on newspapers, signed autographs, game day photos, you name it. And we didn't mention it, not once. We failed to know, like, and trust him, and he had no reason to do any business with us from there. We broke the number one rule that day. And see, I think that this is our problem. This is where we all clam up in any relationships in our life, any kind of conversation we have, is we think what they want to hear is the language of business. And the language of business we're all taught is money, models, metrics. In reality, the language of progress itself is relationships. Relationships are the key to a successful business deal. They're the key to a successful conversation with anyone in your life. You have to establish relationships. I would go so far as to say that relationships are the baseline of our businesses, but they're the backbone of our life. What matters to them should matter to you in any given conversation. So back to my football here. People, they're like the bladder of the football. They are the most overlooked, undervalued resource we have. This is so important, and I can't give it to you enough, how relationships matter in business. I like to think, guilty confession, I have a healthy relationship with an app called TikTok. Yeah? Anybody else in the room? Do you have TikTok? Please wave at me so I'm not the only millennial in the room. Yeah? Okay, cool. See, TikTok knows what to expect from me. It knows what time I'll get home to see it at the end of the day. TikTok knows it can count on at least 3 hours of quality time with me at the end of the day. And TikTok knows exactly what I want to hear and what I want to see. It's the best relationship I have besides my husband. TikTok is great because it knows I don't care to see the pretty polished details of life. Like, I don't need somebody's highlight reel. I don't need to see something gorgeous. Like, I get enough of that crap on Instagram. But if I can go to TikTok, I can see the raw humor of life. I can see cats falling off of things. I hear people tell embarrassing stories and they think they're nailing a dance and they're really not, and we're all cheering them on in it. TikTok knows how to make me laugh. So I think nothing of it when I'm watching a video and this girl in sweatpants, messy bun, no makeup, comes literally stumbling across her kitchen in tears and tells a story about how she, accidentally farted on the intercom at Publix. I'm 30 seconds in before I think to go, oh God, this is an ad for Instacart. TikTok has me. They know exactly how to please me and how to trap me. Do you know what they're doing in that moment? They're using real people to leverage the power of relationships in their marketing. They're using what's called a nano-influencer. If you don't know anything about the tiers of nano-influencers, here's what you need to know. A nano-influencer is you and me. It's somebody with 10,000 or less followers on social media. Raise your hand if you have 10,000 or less followers on social media. Yeah, right? But here's the deal. We, nano-influencers, have 450 times the reach on our posts of verified celebrities. So ladies, if you hear nothing else today, here's the lesson of the day. You could be making a lot more money at home in your sweatpants right now. The end. Relationships are so important, and employers, directors, managers, I called you out earlier for a reason. You need to know this. Your relationships take care of your businesses. LinkedIn has this thing called the 80-20 rule where they say you should be spending no less than 20% of your time getting to know your people on a personal level. That takes care of your attention, your employee satisfaction. Ultimately, it helps the whole thing go round and go smoother. But if you're neglecting those relationships, it's kind of like throwing around a football without a bladder. It's just going to fall flat on the floor. Invest in your personal relationships. And I would say it this way, that real people in right relationships generate real results. If you're taking care of your people, they take care of the rest. Relationships are the first key. Another thing I find really cool about footballs is they're made from the inside out. Do you guys know that? What you do with a football, wow, I got a nod, that was really cool. So smart. Footballs are made from the inside out because you line up all these little leather pieces here, kind of like the cowhide side of them, the inside of them. You stitch them together, flip it right side out, inflate it, stitch the lace up it, and that bad boy's ready to go. The reason you make them from the inside out is so they have a smoother surface. So you don't see all the little bumps and kinks that went into the making of the ball. You just have the purpose you need to move forward. I think we kind of do this when we have those bad date conversations, when we fail to really gear a conversation by telling a story. We get caught up in the weeds and the details and the money and the metrics and the models. And that's the stitching of the football. It's the part that nobody cares about. Nobody needs to hear it to have a compelling story. Finding the compelling part means looking on the inside first. So how many of you have ever heard of a guy named Simon Sinek? Anybody? Cool. So Simon is a thought leader, business entrepreneur. He is an incredible speaker. He's given a TED Talk that made him massively famous in the business world. Wrote a book about it called Start With Why. And in Start With Why, he developed this model that's called the Golden Circle. The Golden Circle looks kind of like this. There are 3 major rings to it. On the outside, the largest ring, you have what, right? You can see that part. If you move inwards, you've got the how. And then on the inside, the littlest part of that circle is why. There's a reason this model looks like this. It's because we as people tend to communicate just like this. We start with what because it's the easy thing. Everyone in this room, if you're part of your business, you know what you do. In your lives, you know what you do. But fewer people can communicate how. Even less can articulate why. Very few people can get out of bed in the morning and give a clear vision that says, this is why I'm here today. This is why I'm doing this. This is why Lawrence County, and this is why my business is so essential. We fail to look to the inside first. And Simon Sinek says that finding the why is the difference between inspiring somebody and manipulating them. One thing is really good and one thing is really bad, right? Our goal is to inspire somebody. When we inspire them, they can own the vision. They have their own loyalty to you, to what you're saying. Have you ever heard somebody say, make it sound like it's their idea? If you want to get your way, make it sound like it's their idea. That sounds like a manipulation tactic, but in reality, no, that's how you inspire somebody. That's how you get them on board with what you're doing, so much so that they will run and tell it on the mountain for you. That's inspiration. Manipulation is short term. It doesn't work and it doesn't help you in the long run. So I'm going to give you some examples of what these things look like, and I'm going to start by a good vision of a why, a good company that did this really well in the Shoals. There's a company called International Fertilizer Development Center, IFDC. They make fertilizer through research. How many of you are stoked about that? Like, woo! Only the people in agriculture, right? But that's not the way IFDC tells their story. No, when you meet someone from IFDC, they say, hey, this is who we are. Our mission is global food security. We want to see every single person on the planet consistently and adequately fed. Because this thing keeps us up at night, what we do is develop food that has fed, I kid you not, more than 50% of the world. A local company has fed more than 50% of the world through their efforts. Oh, and what do? We make fertilizer. That is the difference in inspiring somebody versus manipulating them. It's starting with the why, looking inward first. So some manipulation tactics in your business might look like discounts and 2-for-1 sales and something that tries to get a short-end transaction. For you trying to get a raise with your boss, it might look like having the conversation of, boss, I've been here for a while. I've generated pretty good results. I've risen our numbers to whatever point. Newsflash. That is what your boss hired you for. That's not promotion worthy. That was the bare minimum expectation they had when they hired you. In your family life with your kids, it looks like that dreaded phrase, because I said so, that we're also guilty of using. Those are manipulation tactics. But when we flip the script and inspire somebody, it becomes a totally different conversation. With your boss, if you're trying to talk about getting a raise, that conversation looks like, I love it here. I am passionate about what we're doing, and this is where I see us going. This is the future we can be part of, and here's how I see myself owning it, running it, and making it happen. But there are just some logistics that are not adding up right now. I need something that's going to secure my future here. Can we please have a conversation about that? In your partnership, whether it's a marriage or whether it's a long-term relationship, it looks like figuring out your teamwork before figuring out the work you have to do on the other side of it. When you remind yourself in a time of conflict why we came together in the first place, is because you and I both believe that we are better together for us, and we are better for the world if we are together in partnership. And when you remind yourself of that in hard times, the what we're going to do and how the heck we're going to do it becomes a lot easier when you start with why. This one is me getting on my soapbox for a minute as parents in the room. Because I said so cannot be our go-to phrase. It's the easiest thing to do because we get frustrated, it's difficult, and we just say we don't have the time to talk through these details right now. But with your kids, inspiring them is what you exist to do. When you're having a conversation with them about rules and consequences and why we have guidelines for life, your goal at the end of the day is to make them a happy, healthy, thriving person. Your goal as a parent should be that your kids become better people than you ever stood a chance of being. And you get to shape them. You get to make that happen for them. But if you don't take the time and say, honey, here's why our safety matters. Here's why the thing that you're about to do has good or bad consequences, and motivate them through every step of what that vision looks like. I just want you to have the best life you can possibly have. When we shut it down with a, because I said so, it's a manipulation tactic, and they will grow up not to trust us. Inspiration is everything in your home, in your relationships, and in your business. Everything you do, start with why. For a football, it's starting from the inside to make a smoother ball, right? For businesses, for relationships, creating a smooth operation requires starting from the inside. Always look to the inside first. And finally, I want to talk to you about the lace of a football. Just by show of hands, how many of you have ever thrown a football before? Like somebody at some point in time taught you how? Yeah. How many of you, it's been a long time since you threw that football, but you can still remember how it worked, right? You still remember, as I do, Dad's massive hands over my little 5-year-old hands as he would hold the ball and he would show me exactly where to hold it. And he'd say, put your fingers here between the cross stitches. That's how you hold it. And he would show me how to turn it and how to guide it just right. I have sentimental value with the lace, and I think it's because the lace is a pretty special part of a football. It's the part that we associate memories with, and that's because it's the good part for us. Did you know of this lace, there are 4 feet of leather that went into it? 4 feet of this white stuff made the lace of the football. But what you and I see is just 5 inches lining the ball. That 4 feet is the weeds and details of things that don't matter in your life. Nobody will never understand the countless hours of conversation that went into developing your product, your system. Nobody needs to know the hours of conversation that went into why you chose to relocate, why you put your kids in that school. If you try to sell them by using 4 feet of information, they're going to be overwhelmed and they're just out. But if you can take just that 5 inches, the 5 inches that makes the football special, and just give them the shining detail, the full pitch of what they need, you have inspired them. So I want to tell you, the next time you get in a conversation and you think, I don't have the time, I'm panicked, I'm intimidated, I don't really know how to pitch this to somebody or how to convince them, don't know how to inspire them, least of all, let the lace of the football be your model. It's really easy. Are you ready? I don't know if you can see this pretty well in the audience because it's a small sort of stitching, but that vertical line on the football is just 2 pieces lined together, 1, 2 on either side. That is what you should think of as the relationships in your life that we talked about. The people in unity with you. Who has got your back? Who stands beside you? Who stands behind you in everything you do? Remember them, because they will be the reason you succeed in the future. Remember who you're talking to, because what matters to them should matter to you. Relationships are the light line. And the cross stitches that you have here, those should be your little whys, your purposes along the way, and the milestones of your life. When you can think about what's gotten you here, why you're here now, and where you're going, you have a vision put together. When you create a conversation, you tell a compelling story that's so tightly and beautifully wrapped like the lace of a football, you have nailed the conversation. All there's left to do then is use that guide, show somebody how to hold the ball, put the ball in their hands, and trust that they know what to do with it when you walk away. You know, when the game of football was first played, the ball was created in the shape of a soccer ball. You've seen a soccer ball because you've seen a basketball. You've seen a basketball because you've seen a baseball. You've seen a baseball because you've seen a dodgeball. Everybody's ball is the same shape, right? But football is different. Football figured out pretty early on, we can't continue throwing this ball around. We're never going to get this ball 40 yards if we keep throwing it just like this. No, we have to shape it differently. And that's how the watermelon shape came to be, the teardrop shape of the football. Somebody somewhere along the way said, we can't be lazy. We can't look to the left and to the right of us and just do what everybody else is doing. We can't do what's quick and convenient for us. No, we have to shape our vision, shape our conversations to be intentional. Footballs are intentionally crafted for a specific purpose, and so are we. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great story to tell.